Welcome back, creeps.
Hello, everyone.
Happy fucking Friday.
Happy Friday, everyone. We hope you're doing well. We hope the week hasn't brought you down and you're looking forward to good things and stuff.
Wow, because if the week didn't bring it down, that will. Happy almost Christmas time, everyone.
Oh, yeah, it's December.
Yeah, I keep forgetting because it's my first Christmas that it's not fucking freezing cold.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. Even in the
Yeah.
mornings, usually I'm a little bitch when it comes to the cold, but the morning is still agreeable.
Yeah, I went for a cycle today and it was like fucking 20 degrees.
Oh, fucking old. We were
Nice.
talking about the weather.
Oh, yeah.
It's the most interesting thing in the world.
Also, apologies for last week's episode. I'm not sure what happened. I'm currently in the middle of trying to get it fixed. And I have got it fixed on my end, but it's still not showing up on Spotify. So the way the episode was split up, the start of the episode was at the second half. Again, I don't know how this is happening, but if it happens again, we'll just change providers or something like that.
We'll fire our editor.
Yeah, that is me. Okay, so my story this week is Kadena Airbase.
Okay. Never
know-
heard of it.
Me neither. So my sources are Wikipedia, as always. I like to use Wikipedia just for like a general, try and pick up some random fact. Sandbox.us and wearethemighty.com. Oh, and stripes.com.
You know, when that episode of The Office came out, where Michael was trying to negotiate a raise for himself, in the show he said that there's some rules for negotiation, which were all false, but there were people that created like anonymous accounts and went into Wikipedia, and they completely did away with the original page of negotiations, like the details on that page, and replaced them all with the ones that Michael had suggested. And so since then, there's like, people who post on there have to be not new, like they have to
be verified.
Yeah,
somewhere.
and also you can't post as anonymous. Like you have to have some sort of fucking name so they can trace back to you. But like because of that, some rules of Wikipedia entries have changed.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve Carell. So Kadena Air Base is a United States Air Force base in the Okinawa prefecture of Japan, referred to as the Keystone of the Pacific. I think it's just in a really good strategic place for the army. Over 20,000 American service members, family members, and Japanese employees work or live here. So it's big. It is the largest and most active US Air Force base in the Far East. It even has its very own golf course. And that's where we're going to start. Just beside this golf course is a cave. There are actually multiple caves on the airbase, and some are natural caves, but others were originally ancient tombs, or were natural caves, used as tombs and then later modified for use by the Japanese army. They would use these caves as field hospitals because they were kind of naturally hidden away, like with vines and stuff. And looking at them from afar, they just, you wouldn't notice them straight off the bat, I don't think. So this cave in particular was used as a field hospital during World War II. And the mouth of the cave was hidden with vines, and there was also a mounted machine gun to protect it. Like
a turret.
Yeah, heavy artillery machine gun. Now the story goes that during the war, 17 nurses committed suicide in the cave. So I was trying to find out, because a lot of this story is, local legend. I will preface it by saying that. But I tried to find out, how true this particular part was. And the story goes that they actually all did it like basically in unison, right? Or within a very close span of time.
Like a cult?
Well, it was the fear of the American invasion that did it.
Oh.
Literally, American propaganda
You
supposedly scared these nurses.
you said this is during which
World War II.
Oh, the second one. Okay.
But either way, it's a field hospital, so I'm sure there was many deaths of wounded soldiers there as well. So this place is just bound to be full of negative energy. And it is also a tomb, as far as I can make out, an ancient tomb. So today the cave is sealed off due to all the stories of the caves being haunted by these nurses, and the locals won't even go near it. Like, they try to do their very best to avoid it at all costs because they believe that everything that's happened there has been disrespecting the whole land. So there's literally a cage in front of this because when the Americans invaded, they started using it too as a strategic point. So from there we go to Maida Point, where there is an old man who rambles around the tomb near the water. And apparently if you meet him or if you see him, it means that there's going to be a random body washing up ashore in the next few days.
What's he look like?
An old man.
Just an old man.
Yeah.
Random old Japanese man.
Yep.
All right.
There was also another field hospital located here before America invaded, which just adds more negativity, I'm sure, more deaths on the land within this tomb. Maida Point is also, unfortunately, a commonly used suicide location, with many people jumping from the cliff. This has led to many reports of people seeing the ghosts of suicide victims jumping, but when reported to the police, there is no one to be found. People scuba diving here have said to encounter ghosts underwater.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's a big fuck that from me. Thank you very much. Just so our listeners know, I cannot swim and I'm fucking terrified of the water.
Like ghost fish?
No, ghost people.
Okay.
The ghosts of people who have jumped off the fucking cliff.
Can you imagine a ghost shark coming for you? And as soon as it's about to like attack, it just goes away and you're just left there shitting yourself.
Shitting yourself. I'd probably just die anyway. So gate 3 is a regular looking security gate, but it's a very spiritually active one. So some people have reported seeing Japanese soldiers in World War II uniforms, quote, all the time. But that doesn't really seem to be the main problem here. The big one here is a World War II era Marine who is looking for a match to light a cigarette. So he comes up, it's usually around 3 a.m. and generally on the weekends. He just comes up, he's like, hey man, can I get a light, whatever. And as soon as whoever lights the cigarette, he just disappears in front of them. Like I said, this only ever happens around 3 a.m. and he is also covered in blood.
Oof.
Yeah. But apparently it got so active there that this would happen every single weekend. Like it was bound to happen. Got to the stage where Marines have just started refusing shifts and they just closed the gate altogether. They could not get the men to...
Wow.
Yeah. And I also have a video of the gate, which I'll show you later. So yeah, they have actual video proof. Well, proof of something.
Yeah.
From gate 3 as well, which I will screen record and put up on our Instagram. On our stories are actually posted. So now the big one.
The big one.
This is the big one. So building 2283. Now on the base there are tons and tons of houses, different types, obviously, like for employees, but this one in particular has a really bad rap. It was built for single family use, just looked like a regular house. The stories from this house, however, are particularly interesting, but many people believe them to just be legend by now. So apparently sometime during the 1970s, an Air Force officer murdered his entire family and then killed himself in the building. Now I couldn't find any reports of this, like actual reports, but after finding out some other stuff, I'm not surprised how easy it is to cover this shit up, especially on an airbase full of families. For example, the locals here murdered 3 Marines sometime in the 1940s because after America took over, these 3 Marines in particular, every weekend would go down to the local town, pick women, and just rape them.
Wow.
So this went on long enough that the locals just said, fuck this.
Yeah, because nobody was doing anything about it.
Yeah, because they're Americans.
Yeah, and it's really easy to hide things. Yeah, you're right about like armies. I look at Fort Hood.
Yeah, exactly. It's still
All
going
that
on to this day.
Yeah, and there's probably so much shit they have yet to uncover.
Yeah. So anyway, these guys were taken into the woods and shot and then hidden in a cave. And they were just listed as missing in action. I don't think their officers ever really questioned it. I don't think anyone really cared either.
Yeah.
Until one of the locals with a guilty conscience just came out and was like, look, I didn't do it, but I know what happened and I know where they are. And this was in the 90s.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and this poor guy like must have been a kid when it happened. I think he was 16. Anyway, he just wanted to clear their names and get them buried and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't surprise me if there was families and stuff being murdered and they
Yeah.
didn't want shit like this getting out. The house was still in use after this murder-suicide, and the very next family to move in all reported feelings of unrest and paranoia. Until one day, the father, again, lost his shit and just stabbed them all to death. There's also reports of a story where a man kills his teenage stepdaughter here, but I think that's the same one
Family.
after reading through a few different reports. There are many documented reports of domestic violence from this base still going on to this day. Only a few years ago, another father killed his stepson.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and only now, I guess, it's a little harder to hide certain things like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm assuming this would be the same from any military base all across the world. The whole place chock full of PTSD and
Secrets.
secrets. Anyway, after all this murder and mayhem, they just started using it as a storage facility. I think stories started getting out and they were just like, you know what, families didn't want to move in there naturally. So they just swapped it out and changed it into a storage shed. There are many reports of paranormal occurrences from this house, from one of the rooms being strangely cold as ice, even in summer months and without AC in the building, to faucets being turned on and off on their own. Multiple reports of a woman standing over the sink washing her hair. Yeah, which I thought was...
That's strange.
Yeah. Many people have heard children laughing and crying and playing, despite there being no children around at the time. There was actually a daycare center, like the house next door was converted into a daycare.
Christ.
Yeah, so...
Those poor kids.
Well, let me tell you. So claims of blood stains on the floor and curtains, like apparently there were, either it was never cleaned up or these blood stains would just appear randomly.
Yeah.
But like long after anyone had lived there. The most striking apparition though is that of a fully armored samurai warrior
Whoa.
on horseback
That's sick.
who is said to have just run through the house at random times. Yeah, literally.
That's crazy.
So this going back to like all those ancient, first of all, the samurai aren't as ancient as you think. I think they were still active like as within the last 100 years or maybe just over that. But there is also these ancient tombs and he's accredited to one of the tombs being disturbed in the building of this house. But again, multiple reports of this fucking nutcase on horseback. One tour guide tells of a night when she had brought a group of 30 people to the backyard of the house. So every October, they do haunted tours, going back to like the 90s. Anyway, this one night, this lady, they drive around on a bus because the airbase is so big. She had a group of 30 people, and they're all in the back garden, and she's telling like, you know, the history and the folklore behind the house. And all of a sudden, they hear a phone ring in the house. But there was no phone in the house.
So, who was phone?
Who was phone? But yeah, According to her, there was no phone in the house, and everyone just ran straight for the bus as soon as they heard it. They all just got back on the bus.
As a group of smart people.
Yeah. Another group, again in the mid-90s, showed up one evening, and as their tour guide started giving her talk, a curtain in one of the windows just parted right in front of them, as if somebody was just taking a peek to see who's in their backyard.
Yeah.
Again, everybody ran away. And according to a former tour director for Kadena's United Services Organization, or USO, I had to Google USO because I didn't know what it meant. The room that was always cold was actually just knocked down. Like when they were converting it into a storage facility, all the workers and everyone was like, there's something fucking going on with this room. So they're like, all right, knock it down. I guess as well, just to make it an open floor plan to make it easier to store stuff. But this guy had actually gone into the house himself just to see what all the hype was about. And he reported seeing bloodstains, feeling freezing cold despite the fact that it was 100 degrees outside that day. And he said it was an extremely eerie experience going into that house. One could almost feel a presence there. So again, I don't know. All the local lore and stuff like that, I'm sure.
So at the moment, it's a storage facility.
At that time it was, yeah.
Oh, okay. So do they still do tours in that area?
They probably do. I'm not 100% on that. A seance held on Halloween night 1994.
Why?
Led to Jane Hitchcock, author of Ghosts of Okinawa, which I only found out about late in the researching of this. Otherwise I would have tried to gotten it. She claims to have communicated with the spirit of a little girl and boy. And according to her, the little girl was afraid of the man on the horse.
Oh.
Which I'm pretty sure fucking everybody was.
Right. Can you imagine living in that house and trying to watch TV?
Yeah, do you think
and clockwork? Yeah, like clockwork. There's this fucking horse man that fucking runs in front of the TV.
Yeah,
you know what I'm
seriously.
saying?
Like in my head, he's like bursting through the wall, and
in my head, he's like, we're watching something on Netflix.
He's just in the way.
And he runs left to right, in front of the TV screen, in the most worst times. So it's like, we're about to find out who the culprit is in this mystery fucking movie. Fucking horseman comes.
Just screaming and charging. So this lady, Jane, she used candle or fire scrying, as I have just learned, thanks to Dulce, to communicate with the spirits. And for those of you who don't know, it's literally you light a candle and you ask the questions and you say, I guess, make the flame bigger for yes or smaller for no or something along those lines. And she said that sometimes the flame would go from barely lighting to 5 inches high.
Oh.
In time with her questions. She also had successful EVP sessions there, but she was so scared that she just never went back to the house.
Yeah. That sounds scary.
I mean, yeah. So
guess that's why you're telling the story, right?
Yeah. So the house was actually demolished in 2010 because the military said that they had no use for it. But today it's just an empty lot.
No
which
shit.
I find weird. And apparently anyone who was sent to do work there reported headaches, hallucinations, suffered a high rate of on-the-job injuries. Anytime they were sent supposedly to knock it down, something would happen and the workers would get scared or...
Wait, knock down the lot?
No, the house.
Oh.
Yeah, the house was empty for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
While every other house in this area was occupied.
Gone. Oh, just this one house.
Yeah, just this one house.
Okay.
So eventually it was demolished, and the theory is that anytime they originally went to demolish it, the workers would just get scared off or get injured or something bad would happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So remember the daycare next door?
Yes.
Teachers from the daycare kept complaining that the kids were throwing their toys over the fence. And when they were asked why they did it, they just said, the little kids on the other side asked us to.
Oh, because they don't have toys to play with.
Yeah. So these kids in the daycare were just like, oh, it's just for the other kids, you know what I mean?
Oh, how sweet.
But then the teachers had to climb over the fence or walk around to this creepy ass fucking house and pick up all the toys.
I'd be like, nah, kid, you threw it over there. You're coming with me.
Yeah. And tie a rope around the kid and send him over. So that's the main like sites from this place. But the website that I got this off, stripes.com, reached out to people. So stripes.com is short for Stars and Stripes. It's like a military and post-military, I guess, community type page. They're very proud. So I've titled this Not Listener Stories, because these are people's personal experiences from Kadena, which were sent into stripes.com after they reached out one Halloween. So Catherine Lowry shares this hair-raising experience about Kadena Airbase's Building 721, and one more reason why you should never forget your CAC ID. Not sure what CAC means, but I'm hoping that we find out. It's called The Grumpy Spirit of a Forgotten Englishman. My commander didn't believe me when I told him why I was late. Last week I had shown up without my CAC for the same reason. My office is haunted. Some of my co-workers had warned me that staying in our office after dark would not end well. I had laughed off these concerns. Our building was only 60 years old, made of solid concrete, and did not have any questionable backgrounds such as like being a mortuary or something as morbid. Besides, I didn't believe in ghosts, and any Japanese or American who might have died in that area during the Battle of Okinawa likely had bigger things to care about than messing with some new airman. While all of these things were true, there was one story I hadn't factored into my reasoning. Englishman. That's right, from England. Thanks for clearing that up, Catherine. I wasn't expecting to see a ghost, but I especially wasn't expecting to meet an English one. The windows started rattling unexplainably, but then I would hear a whine and the rattling would stop. During broad daylight, things like this can be shrugged off easily, along with the shrill creaks that come from some dense foliage that backs up to our parking lot.
When you said whine, and because the story's about the grumpy Englishman, I just imagine like I heard the grumpy Englishman complain about something.
Oh, I was thinking wine bottle.
Oh.
But one night I forgot my CAC at work and drove back in the dark of night to pick it up. And the strangest thing happened. I left the door unlocked, but when I returned it was locked tight from the outside, and I could hear the windows of my office rattle. I heard an odd rustling and turned just in time to see the back of a British naval garb vanish into the foliage. Although no words were spoken, I could have almost sworn I got the phrase, "Don't even think about entering colonial rebel." To me that just sounds like Star Wars.
Yeah.
"Don't even think about entering colonial rebel," put into my head as if someone had whispered it to me. I fled to my car and drove away without any more attempts to go inside. I spent the next morning with the base historian learning about what could possibly be roaming outside Building 721. Turns out that I wasn't imagining the Navy uniform the night before. During 1853, Commodore Perry came onto Okinawa and forced the government to open up the island to trading. While he was here on his mission, one of his rowdier sailors, Reuben Noland, got a little too celebratory with the gin rations and missed the call back to the ships and got left behind. Good. That's what I say. Good. Reuben was a less than likable character, and so he outstayed his welcome in the locals' homes and was forced to wander as far south as current-day Kadena Airbase. He was always bitter about being left behind and died within 2 months as a terrible drunk. No one was really sure what to do with the body because the locals cremated bodies and put them in family tombs, but he had no family tomb to go to. Therefore, his ashes were simply spread in the forest, and unfortunately, 170 years later, our well-meaning construction workers picked up some of the ashes in the piles of dirt they used to make the concrete for our building. Needless to say, Reuben has been less than pleased ever since his homeless body was moulded into the walls to house the operations of American patriots. I guess he didn't hear the US and England ended up as allies. While his physical matter is encased in the walls of 721, Reuben's ghost is said to haunt the outside and become especially irritable at night. Not entirely convinced, I came in early the next morning before the sun was up. As I pulled up, I could almost see Reuben's distinct uniform coming out of the foliage behind the parking lot, getting ready to pounce on anyone who dared disturb him at night. I quickly drove to the edge of the parking lot closest to the road, kept all my lights on, and waited for the sun to show up. Although I was supposed to get something ready before I went to meet my commander at 6:30, I made a decision in the parking lot. I decided I'd rather be the airman that got in trouble for being late rather than the airman who was carried off by the ghost of an angry Englishman. And although I am no longer fearful of Reuben, I sometimes leave him tea and always make sure I finish all of my work during daylight hours. So this one is called Tales from the Class. And according to Stripes.com, here are some ghoulish tales from Miss Megita and a couple of her students at Leicester Middle School, which is on the base. I was home alone at my house on Foster. It was around 9 o'clock. It was pitch black outside and none of my family was home. I was watching Netflix in my room in the back of the house. My door was shut and all my lights were off while I wrapped myself in a cocoon of blankets in my bed, snuggly and warm. Suddenly, my doorknob started rattling as if someone was trying to get into my room. I froze. I couldn't breathe, knowing that no one was home. There was a shadow pacing back and forth that I could see from the small slip of light from under the door in the hallway. Both my dogs were on my bed laying down, but heads and ears perked up, listening, but suddenly jumped down and started barking at the door, looking like they were about to attack whatever it was they were looking at. I felt weak and scared, my eyes almost bulging out of my head in fear while I sat there in my dark room. I couldn't hear anything but the quiet voices from the TV that I drowned out. I got up, barely being able to walk, and slowly lurked my way over to the door and steadily opened the door and peeked out my door. That's literally what she said. Lurked my way over to the door and steadily opened it. I peeked out just to see that nothing was there. This was a few months ago during the summer and nothing has happened since. So that's from Alexia Haar. Thanks, Alexia. This one's called The Vanishing Woman. This is a story that my uncle told me. In Japan, there's this week when all of our family members that died come back. Well, not literally, but we celebrate it because we miss our family members. One of those days, my uncle was driving to my grandma's house because we always got together in my grandma's house. And while he was driving, he saw this woman. She looked like a regular woman, but when she walked behind a bus stop, usually it would only take you about 3 or 4 seconds to walk past the bus stop. After 3 seconds, he could see her. When he drove past the bus stop, he looked behind him and she was gone. She just disappeared.
Wow.
That's Yumi Alvarado.
Sick.
Yeah. This next one's called Silhouette in the Woods. This is a story that my great-grandfather used to tell my dad. One time, in the middle of the night, I needed to use the bathroom. This was back in the day when there was no indoor plumbing, so we had to use the outhouse that was deep in the woods.
That sucks.
Jesus, why not just put it closer? If we wanted to relieve ourselves. So I got up and looked into the darkness of the woods through my window as shivers went down my spine. I would literally open the back door and just piss on the steps. I wouldn't even care. I opened the front door and proceeded to walk into the dark and scary woods. All of a sudden, I heard something breathing on my shoulder.
What?
So I ran as fast as I could to get away from whatever was behind me. When I reached the outhouse, he ran into the woods. He didn't run back home. Fuck it, piss in your bed. I don't care. When I reached the outhouse, I was petrified at the sight of a dark silhouette of a face staring straight into my eyes. For a while, I thought it was my brother, Alton. He was the mischievous kind who liked to play tricks. Alton, is that you? I stammered. It didn't speak.
Fuck.
I bolted out of there at the speed of light, fearing what would happen next. When I finally reached my house, I saw a light shining from the porch. There was Alton, sitting at the porch. To this day, I never knew who or what that creature was that was sitting in the outhouse. Fucking hell, that was from Rio Oliver. Well, I guess his granddad. This next one's called Ghostly Grasp. Oh, I think this is the last one. I know of someone who didn't believe in ghosts at all until experiencing one in Okinawa. While traversing the parking lot to their car, that I think some of this is like translated from Japanese.
Could be.
So we got some interesting vocab going on. Grammar, yeah. While traversing the parking lot to their car from the Hambi town San-A.
Whoa.
Yep.
Alright.
Okay.
Maybe it's a kind of sandwich.
Maybe. Speaking of which, I'm starving.
Me too. Twinsies.
They felt their wrist grasped tightly by an unseen hand. Dropping the newly purchased items, they screeched and tore at their unseen captor. The sensation lifted, but left them with an uneasy stomach and a drumming heart. Ba, 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 da, ba, ba.
That's so dramatic.
Yeah. Beautifully written.
Yeah.
Later, I was informed that Hambi Town San-A used to be the morgue for the military shortly after World War II. While this hasn't ever happened to me, I feel a little hesitant whenever I am in that parking lot. I would too, Kendra Megita, who that was from.
I would love a Hamby right now, whatever the fuck that is. I'm so hungry.
But yeah, so that's Kadena Airbase in Okinawa.
I just realized, like, oh wait, no, I got my acronyms wrong. I was like, oh yeah, Handby, like a hand job, but that's not a B. Is not a J.
It's also Hamby.
A ham bitch.
We're getting sidetracked. So yeah, anyway, that's Kadena Airbase. I thought it was pretty fucking interesting. We were only talking about this like not that long ago, how much we love these like military ghost stories.
Oh yeah.
And while Kadena has like, well, specifically that house, was it 2282? 2283, building 2283, is supposedly the most haunted house in all military bases, US military bases.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but there's a whole fucking bitch load of spooky stories from all of the military bases.
Wow, a bitch load.
A bitch. I'm so hungry, I can't even fucking think of proper words to say. But I'm sure I'll come back to more military stuff. And if any of you are in the military or have lived in any of these type of bases or whatever the fuck, please let us know, because we want all the spooky stories.
And with that, we're going to go try to find a Hamby. We're going to take a break.
We are?
And we're going to eat. So we'll be back in a second.
All right. Bye.
I feel like a human being again.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. All right. It's your turn. Tell me a story. You entertain me. I'm going to sit here with my full belly and drink this cup of tea. And chime in with occasional ooh and ah. And what the fuck?
Things that let me know that you're paying attention.
That I'm still awake, yeah.
Right. I guess it's only fair, right?
Yeah.
So my sources are Occult World, North Omaha History, Omaha Magazine, plainsight.org, justia.com, and omaha.org.
I have nothing to say about Omaha. I don't know. Is that a state? Or no, it's a town in Nebraska.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to be discussing Hummel Park. Have you heard of it?
No.
Okay. Well, it's in Nebraska.
Is it in Omaha, Nebraska?
Yes.
Is it? Am I saying Omaha?
Yeah.
Omaha?
Yeah.
Omaha?
Yeah. So the 200 acres of land is rumored to be an ancient Native American burial ground. It was once the site of a fur trading post run by Jean-Pierre Cabin in 1823. It was later named in tribute to J.B. Hummel, a longtime superintendent of the Omaha Parks and Recreation Department.
Not the porcelain figurine guy.
Or the TV show Parks and Rec.
What?
Never mind. Okay. Hummel Park was created from land donated to the city of Omaha in 1930. I use the word donated loosely. An area at the eastern edge of the park is known as Devil's Slide because of the many suicides that have taken place there. Also, there are some stone formations that loosely resemble altars, so it's rumored to be a site for satanic rituals and occult goings on.
Nothing worse than those occult goings on.
One of the Hummel Park's most mysterious characteristics is the trees that bow over the road entering the park. I love trees that look like that.
Yeah, me too.
They're so pretty and spooky.
Spooky.
There's a ton of them in St. Augustine.
Okay.
Anyways.
Lots of trees in St. Augustine, folks.
I love St. Augustine. It is believed that many black women and men were hanged from these trees in the early 1900s
Jesus.
by local racist lynch mobs, and their ghosts still dangle from the trees.
That's terrifying.
It is. So there is going to be some naysayers, obviously, that say none of this stuff is true. But as we know, history happens as accurately as a person who writes it wants it to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just
bear that in mind.
Bear that in mind, yeah. Another of Hummel Park's well-known mysteries is the morphing stairs, a long stone staircase located at the top of the park. These stairs are said to morph because nobody knows the exact number of stairs in the staircase. Each time a person counts the number going up or down, a different number is counted on the return trip. The morphing stairs lead down a large hill into a valley containing a decrepit pit area with a deteriorating shelter house. Now, I've seen this shelter house. It looks nice on the outside. They built it because it was like, we want people to come here, to feel invited to come here.
Yeah.
Which leads me to believe that this park has a really bad reputation. So this is like a sign of trying to get people to come and hang out.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, come and hang out. It's not dark and
gross
scary.
and haunted.
Yeah. But inside that shelter house, it's like covered in graffiti. So there it is.
Charming.
I know. Some people say, and you know what? And it's not even good graffiti. You know, like one thing to like, it would have been a good idea if they graffitied it in a way to look like the inside of a cabin, because it looks like a cabin with no doors. Like it's kind of like the doorways are open, you know, on either side.
So you want graffiti artists to become graphic designers?
That would have been.
Sorry, not graphic designers.
Well, no, because there's graffiti artists out there that have really good talent, and they want to do this, you know? Some people say the reason for this is because the stairs are so old that they're always crumbling to nothing, so the number always changes, but I don't see how that explains the differing numbers, like, on the spot.
Yeah.
But whatever. There's also supposed to be a secret community of albino cannibals that live in hiding. I think this is probably the least likely of all the stories about Hummel Park. I think it's just people being dumb and spreading a really dumb story.
Yeah, but albino cannibals, that's...
Yeah.
Talk about like...
It's like very specific. Exactly. It's like, okay, you're going to... Alopecia cannibals, you know,
yeah.
That's so fucking random.
I'm sorry, Frank, you can't join our club. I know you love how humans taste, but...
I don't understand. But anyways, so I did pull up and find lots of cases linked to the park. So if you believe the urban legends or not, you know, the following did happen. I think this is another situation where there's been so much bad shit going on here that it will attract bad things and put out bad things. So it like there's a continuous vicious negative cycle type of situation.
Right, yeah.
So, disturbing crimes reported by local media. In 1933, a radio repairman was murdered in the park. His boss apparently shot him in the chest, and he immediately started to bleed out, and he died on arrival to the hospital.
That's crazy. I would imagine a radio repairman back then was like next to a king, you know? Everybody had their radios. Everybody needed their radios fixed.
Kind of like the AC man in Texas.
Yeah, exactly.
December 1933, 19-year-old Rose Engel was killed in the park when the car she was riding in overturned on a curb. 1947, a drunk driver left Hummel Park and ran into a University of Omaha hayrack ride and killed one person. The information alleged that on the 11th day of October 1947, defendant in Douglas County, Nebraska, did unlawfully, but did without malice, kill Freddie Freeland, and that the unlawful acts of the defendant which caused the death of deceased were the operation of his motor vehicle while under the influence of intoxicating liquor. His operation at a high, dangerous, and reckless speed not proper under the circumstances, 60 miles an hour, and its operation on the wrong side of the highway. So I got that from like court documents.
That was the guy who killed the guy with the drunk driver?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for some of these things, I was able to actually find court documents.
Right.
So if I start talking in
legal jargon.
I
didn't know what was going on.
That's what it is. I didn't get possessed and start
speaking in tongues.
January 1949, 2 motorcyclists discovered George Rux's frozen corpse on the outskirts of the park. October 1950, 2 men armed with a hatchet and hammer attacked 2 soldiers and their dates at the park, and then forced the 2 women, one 15 and the other 21, to leave with them. Both were reportedly raped and then released on a random Omaha street corner. August 1954, a reported sexual assault of 3 women at Hummel Park. 1956, an adult male was tried for raping a woman at the park. Apparently, a group of boys drove up on a random group of girls, took them to the park. One got beat up and assaulted and taken to the hospital. Like, she got beat up bad.
Yeah.
Like, her eye, like, she couldn't open her eyes. Her lips were busted. She was semi-unconscious after all this.
Well, I think to have to go to the hospital back then was a...
Yeah. So I read the notes on this, and it was really hard to stomach, but they didn't even know these girls. They just picked them up.
Yeah.
And they took them, and the girl was a virgin. Like, she was terrified, and the guy was like, you're either going to give it to me the hard way or the easy way.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, you know, he raped her, and then he him and his friends dropped the girls off and threatened them. They were like, if you tell anyone, we're going to kill you. So the girls took, Rosemary was her name. They took Rosemary to her home, and they took her to the hospital. And the guy, like, they tried him, and the guy was like, oh, well, it was consensual. But, like, the hospital records were like, she has trauma in her areas, there's semen present. Like, there's no way in hell this was consensual. There's, like, pictures of her, like, the way, the state that she was in when she went to the hospital. They're like, there's no way this was consensual. So they threw the book at him. Plus, there was, like, a ton of witnesses that testified against him. So he couldn't weasel out of that one.
Good.
February 1960, the frozen body of a woman was discovered near the park. November 1970, 15-year-old Lori Jones was found dead, shot 3 times, after her companions claimed they'd left her sleeping inside a car at Hummel Park. April 1973, a 20-year-old woman was carjacked in Omaha and forced to drive to Hummel Park, where she was raped and then driven back to the city where her assailant fled. 1983, a group of prostitutes from Omaha killed another prostitute and dumped her body outside of Hummel Park. The brutal softball bat murder of 18-year-old prostitute Laura LaPointe happened southwest of the park. Her body was discovered nude in a ditch, and 4 other prostitutes were later convicted. These 4 had originally planned to rob a prospective John, but instead they found Laura LaPointe and robbed her instead. They then sexually assaulted her before beating her to death with a bat and ditching her body in Hummel Park and throwing her clothes in the trash.
Wow.
Yeah. May 1984, 2 men were arrested for sexually assaulting a 25-year-old woman at knife point in Hummel Park. July 1984, police had no suspects in the death of 21-year-old Michelle Lemaire, who was intentionally run over and left to die north of the park. September 1985, a 36-year-old woman reported she was sexually assaulted at Hummel Park. June 1986, a 34-year-old man was charged with the sexual assault of a 17-year-old Omaha woman at the park. 1988, a recently released convict was convicted again of raping a woman at the park. Here's an excerpt from the case. In May of 1986, the 17-year-old female victim was waiting for a friend in a parking lot in Omaha when she met the defendant, age 34. The two visited and exchanged telephone numbers. From then on, defendant would call the victim at least 3 times a day. He told her he was 27. On June 7, 1986, while the victim was walking in her neighborhood, the defendant drove up and told her he wanted to talk to her. The victim got into the defendant's car, and after stops at a liquor store, at the home of the defendant's brother, at his sister's apartment, and then at a McDonald's, the defendant drove to Hummel Park, where he sexually assaulted the victim, according to her testimony. She said she attempted to fight back, but he threatened to beat her and said that he had a gun under the seat and that he, quote, he hadn't had a woman in a long time, end quote, because he had been in the penitentiary. The state also called as a witness another alleged victim of the defendant's sexual proclivities, a 16-year-old female. According to her testimony, the defendant had met her in March of 1986 as she was leaving a grocery store. A few days later, she was walking home. The defendant again approached her in his car, and this time the alleged victim gave defendant her telephone number. After this, the defendant telephoned her 4 to 5 times a day. Finally, on March 14, 1986, she agreed to meet the defendant when she got off the bus after school. She got in his car. The defendant drove to a liquor store and then to Carter Lake. She then insisted that she had to go home. Instead, the defendant drove her to Hummel Park. And although she attempted to resist him, after telling her he had a gun in the glove compartment, he raped her. Afterward, the defendant told her, quote, he did it because he hadn't been with a woman in a long time, end quote. In 1992, a high school student was kidnapped and murdered in the park. Central High School sophomore Jeremy Drake was kidnapped and killed at the park over stolen car stereo speakers. Drake's body was discovered by a woman walking her dog. Jeremy Herman was convicted of the crime, but it was overturned recently. And when I mean recently, I mean like last year, like November of last year. If he isn't out now, he will be soon. December 1999, Scott Addison was lured to Hummel Park to sell a stereo where he was beaten and stabbed. His 2 assailants left him for dead, and Addison wrote their names in his own blood on the trunk of his car before he walked a quarter mile to find help.
Wow.
June 2005. Jose Lucio survived being shot in the back in the park by a member of the notorious MS-13 gang. May 2006. Someone ghost hunting in Hummel Park discovered the shallow grave of 12-year-old Amber Harris. Roy Ellis was convicted of rape and murder and was sentenced to death. February 2008. 16-year-old David Murillo lost control of his Honda in the park and died after he was ejected when his car went into a ravine. December 2013, Washington County deputies found the body of an unknown man north of the park, whose death was considered suspicious. Now tell me this place is not fucking haunted.
It's not haunted.
Like, this place is covered in bad juju.
Yeah. Something obviously is fucking not right there.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that people are like, it's 200 acres. If I take people here, if I do my deviant proclivities here, no one's gonna know.
Yeah.
Or it could be something that's driving them there, like attracting all these bad things here.
So I think what you're saying is we shouldn't go to Hummel Park. It sounds like it's just in a fucking shitty part of town as well.
Could be, yeah. But like, there's that theory, right?
Yeah.
Of the stink. If you've been with us long enough, you know what the stink is.
Yeah.
And it sounds like this place is riddled with stink. Paranormal stink. Negative stink. So that's I guess my bio on the place.
Yeah. Right on.
So don't go to Hummel Park. Bad shit happens.
Okay. You know what time it is?
Is it tool time?
Listen to story time. Okay, so this week's listener story is from Sarah. And Sarah says she was a social care worker at a hostel and she worked there for years. But on her last day, she had a very weird experience. I don't know why I'm reading it in the third person. On my last day, I had a weird experience. It was a 24-hour shift, so I was getting out of bed at 7 a.m. and was heading to the bathroom to wash up. I heard someone say my name as clear as day, to the point where I actually checked the corridor. I was the only one there. I swear I recognized the voice I heard was that of a client of mine who died the year previously after his heart gave up from complications from a life of addiction. I had an amazing relationship with this lad. He even disclosed to me the sexual abuse he experienced as a child. He called me his rocker angel. But yeah, 99% sure that voice that I heard was his. That's it.
Wow.
Short and to the point.
Yeah.
But also kind of sweet. It's like he knew that it was her last day there, you know?
Yeah.
It's like one final chance to say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
So instead I'm just going to creep the shit out of you.
You're like, yeah, she'll appreciate that.
Yeah. So it looks like this episode is nice and short.
Yeah.
Nice and concise.
It's a nice change, I think, for our editor.
Yeah. Hope everyone has a great weekend.
Yeah.
And
if you have to work, oh fucking well.
Okay. Jesus.
No,
I don't think they're complaining.
Because I think I have to work this weekend. Yeah, I work this weekend. So you'll be on the grind with me.
Yeah, we'll have fun working if you have to. And don't forget to follow us on all the social media bullshit.
Oh, yeah. And if you see me on Among Us, because I'm really into that game right now, Among Us, what I like to call humongous. If you see a player called Toe Beans, that's me. Say hi.
Yeah, you have a little pet with you, right?
Yeah, sometimes it's a hamster in a ball, and other times it's an alien dog with one eye.
And I am also on there, but I don't really play it that much.
Oh, and I always have a banana on my head.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you heard it here first. If you want to play Among Us with us, reach out.
Oh,
We'll set up a private game. That'd be cool.
That would be so fucking cool.
Yeah. We're not weirdos like that. We don't mind. So yeah.
No, but we are.
But I mean, yeah, you know what I mean. We're not going to bite.
Play with us.
So yes, social media at Weekly Creep on everything. Let us know what you think. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please, I don't know, like rate and review.
Yeah.
If you listen to us on YouTube, which very few people do, but that is an option, make sure to subscribe and like all of our videos. And I think that's it. Thanks for being deadly.
Just thanks for listening to us.
Yeah, we
no
really
one else
appreciate
does.
it.
We don't even listen to each other.
No, after this, Like, this is the only time of the week that we actually talk to each other.
Yeah, we just go ignoring each other for the rest of the week.
Yeah, I'm going to go into the other room where the cats live. And that's it. All right, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.